Well, like it or not, there's a realistic world in which Ty Thompson decides whether or not Oregon wins the Pac-12 this year if Bo Nix goes down. So, should he really be the backup quarterback right now? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen to or watch this show. We just hit 2,600 subs on the YouTube channel, hundreds more on podcasts, trying to get to 1,000 over there as well. Thank you all so much for continuing to support the show. We've got Ty Thompson talk. We've got recruiting, college football playoff, and then some baseball talk to wrap up today's show. Plenty to get to. But the reason I say that Ty Thompson could factor into whether or not Oregon wins the Pac-12 this year is we have seen seasons in which mobile quarterbacks have gone down with an injury. This has happened several times in Oregon's history, by the way. And the inability for the backup quarterback to navigate Oregon to enough wins has in the past hindered Oregon's ability to win the conference. I think back to 2015. Vernon Adams gets hurt, and it's a mishmash of Jeff Locke and Taylor Alley. They weren't able to get it done, right? They did win a game at Colorado. Now, it was Colorado, so it's not, saying a whole lot there. But they lost a game at home against Washington State, a game that went to overtime. They lost to Utah when Vernon Adams went down at halftime of that game. You contrast that with a 2011 Pac-12 Championship season. Darren Thomas wasn't able to play against 18th ranked, I believe it was, Arizona State at Autzen Stadium. Brian Bennett steps in under the bright lights on national television, wins Oregon the game, goes on to start the next week, I think it was as well, against Washington State. The Cougs weren't very good then. They win that game handily. And I think anytime you have a mobile quarterback like Bo Nix, you have to have in the back of your mind an openness to the possibility that the backup could play a game. And remember how close we came to that a season ago. If you go back and listen to the episodes leading up to the Utah game, if I remember correctly, and I often do, not always, but I often do, part of my discussion on Friday's show, the day before the game, was what we needed from Ty Thompson at the quarterback position in order to win the game. Because it had looked like, given a comment that was maybe intentional, maybe not, from Chris Hudson, that Ty was going to play, that he was going to start. He ended up getting in for the one snap, and it was an absolute calamity, which unfortunately has been a number of the snaps that Ty has taken in his couple of seasons with the Ducks. But he looks like Oregon's backup quarterback going into this year, and like it or not, that's kind of where I think the quarterback room is at. I don't expect Novosad to be ready on that front, which I'll get to in a moment, but it's absolute. You never think about the backup quarterback until you need him. He's like the kicker. You don't ever want to hear from him. You don't ever want to have to think about him necessarily. You want him to just kind of be there. But then when the moment arises and you need that guy to step up, it is suddenly season defining. Perfect example on the kicker front, Camden Lewis, who struggled mightily as a true freshman in 2019, has of course improved dramatically since then, steps up against Washington State at home against a Mike Leach coach team, RIP, and hits a game-winning field goal as time expires. And Oregon trailed 35-34 at that moment. They escape with the win. They end up going to the Pac-12 Championship game as the champions of the North. Without that, I don't remember who was behind them, but they maybe don't end up going 8-1 in conference play. They maybe don't beat Utah in the Pac-12 Championship game. They maybe don't go to the Rose Bowl and beat Wisconsin. So all that sort of stuff can come to fruition. You have to be prepared for that. And look, do I feel amazing about Ty Thompson as a backup quarterback? No, because based on what we've seen so far, The coaching staff, multiple coaching staffs, have not trusted him to be the starter. And when he's entered the game under both staffs, he hasn't been fully trusted with the total arsenal and with the entire playbook. Now, the second half of the spring game this year leads you to think, well, maybe there is, some growth taking place there. But then you think about the first half and you say, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. So I bring this up today because this stemmed from a mailbag question, which you can always be a part of. We've got a lot of them in there, but you can keep them coming. I will always answer questions on the show. I love engaging with you all, and you have fantastic insights and questions and things for me to ponder and think about and such. You can jump in the YouTube comments, drop one in there, or hit me up on Twitter at Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. This one came in from Skirt Mayo 1563 space 34. I didn't come up with it. He did. Do you think Ty Thompson should get all the backup reps next season and have Austin Novosad potentially redshirt? If Ty doesn't pan out, who would you like to see start at quarterback for Oregon next season? Well, the answer for 2024 is I need to see an offseason first to see where Austin Novosad is. I think a lot of people's default answer is going to be, I want to transfer to come in and start 2024. I'm not automatically there. I'm not opposed, but I'm not automatically there right now because some guys need a little bit of time before they start. And the whole argument of, well, why would you start an inexperienced guy when you could go get an experienced guy? It's not as if guys starting for the first time are incapable of succeeding. Justin Herbert hadn't played until he played. Mariota hadn't played till he started playing. Darren Thomas even sat out his first year, started as a true sophomore, right? Only thing he did was, I think, a trick play in the Civil War as a freshman. He threw, I think, a pass back. I might be thinking of that incorrectly. But anyway, I think he did that in one of those games of that 2009 season. That was the only thing he'd ever done. If you applied today's world of college football to that situation, we wouldn't have started Darren Thomas. We would have said, no, we need to go get a guy who's played before. Well, maybe some guys just need one offseason, right? So you're going to have two quarterbacks coming in 2024, Luke Moga and Michael Van Buren. I don't expect either of them to be ready to start come next fall. But Ty Thompson? Austin Novosad? Why not? I don't see why it couldn't happen. I'm not expecting it to. But for a guy like Novosad, who I thought held himself pretty darn well in the spring game, he might just need the one offseason, right? Herbert would have sat that entire offseason if 2016 hadn't gone off the rails. Thomas did sit for a year. Mariota redshirted his first year. And then they were ready to start. And some guys just have that it factor. And I think we have to wait and see what happens on that front. But as for this particular season, I do expect Austin Novosad to redshirt. Fully expect that to be the plan. And for Ty Thompson to be the backup. And the reason, even though Ty has, certainly left us with plenty of questions with regards to his ability to step in and start as a quarterback if called upon, the reason I would expect him and frankly want him to be the backup over Novosad is a guy who's been in college for the last 3 years. Even if he is not even close to his full potential as a quarterback, I don't think Novosad has shown enough, and maybe he does in fall camp, but I doubt it. I don't think he's shown enough command, ability, physical traits as well, everything you need to play the quarterback position to just surpass Ty on the depth chart, who we all understand has flaws, but still, he's got an ingrained level of trust to be a backup from this coaching staff, right? He was the number 2 guy a season ago. Wasn't the only quarterback on the roster. Jay Butterfield was on the roster a season ago. He was a 4-star guy, a lot like Austin Novosad, frankly. They're kind of similar from a prospect evaluation standpoint. He was on the roster a year ago, and Ty was the backup. So I don't expect a true freshman coming in to just pass Ty on the depth chart, and I don't think that Oregon necessarily needs him to. Now, if he does, that would be a clear indication that Novosad is going to be ready to start come 2024. But I expect Ty to be the backup. I hope he isn't called upon to start a game, but it is not inconceivable, given the history of college football and the way the game often goes, that someone, lest we forget the 2008-7 season when we went through 5 quarterbacks that year, and Justin Roper played. We thought he was the guy, but then it was Masoli, and Masoli ended up being the dude and such. You can go down a depth chart pretty quickly at the quarterback position if things go in a way that you don't necessarily want them to. Oregon has to be prepared for that, and I think Ty is the most ready to step in. He might not be as ready as Brian Bennett was, or as Justin Herbert was as a true freshman, but I think of the options Oregon's got available to them, he is the best of them at the backup quarterback position and should be the number 2 guy. Oregon should be in a great place going forward if Lanning continues to recruit like this. And it is a net positive, though I'm not a fan, for Oregon when you talk about expanding the college football playoff. We have to get to all of that. We have to get to bird dogs too, because bird dogs make you look good. They feel good. Their versatility is maybe their best quality. Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit better than regular shorts as well that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fix the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. You can wear them on the golf course, on a date, on a hike, on a walk, on a jog, anywhere you want. In the water, you can bring them everywhere. They're the perfect summer shorts. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Bird Dog shorts this summer, we promise you, so go get your next order today. There it is. A little spillage, but there's our second segment sip. Keeps us going, keeps us refreshed, and gives you the best possible audio that we can. So, next question came in from Blazer Duck. All you everydayers out there know Blazer Duck. I mean, Blazer Duck knows the show, and Blazer Duck clearly isn't tired of having his name called on the show. He submits these questions, maybe once a week or so. And I say questions because he sends like 5 or 6 or 7, and I pull them out, when appropriate and such. He is the best question asker out there. You're all fantastic. Seriously, you are. You come up with great, unique, fun, creative, engaging topics. But Blazer Duck, man, he's got so many thoughts, including this one. Spencer, if Dan Lanning pulls in the best recruiting class in Oregon history and performs better on the field this year, wins, he puts in all caps, should Oregon look to lock him down with a bigger, longer contract? As you said, the head coach is the most important coach on the team for a variety of reasons. Thanks. Short answer is yes, but here's the caveat I will add there. Just because you bring in a great recruiting class does not automatically garner you an extension. It is about what happens on the field. Now, if he were to pull in where the 2024 class is trending, which could be pushing the envelope on being the best class in program history, if he accomplishes that feat and wins a Pac-12 championship, not because of the recruiting, but I think the recruiting would kind of sweeten the pot for the Oregon athletic department to say, yeah, we need to lock this guy down, give him a raise, give him an extension and whatnot to keep him in Eugene. They did that with Mario Cristobal after the 2019 Pac-12 championship. You see it with coaches all over the place, but recruiting alone is not going to get you anything. Jimbo Fisher signed this big-time contract. He signed the highest-rated class in program history, signed the number 1 class, but the wins haven't been there. So talk of an extension isn't coming about because ultimately the reason you want your coaches to recruit at a high level is so that you can have the personnel that you need to win a lot of football games. That's the whole objective here. So I think it sweetens the pot, but if Lanning were... if we're going to talk about whether or not Lanning should get an extension, like he had a good, not great, but a good year 1. He is recruiting at a great level. And I don't think there's even been major talk in Oregon circles amongst fans or within the athletic department, to my knowledge. Not that I, am talking to people in there and such, but I haven't heard a peep about whether or not you should extend Dan Lanning. And I think that's appropriate right now. I'm encouraged by what I saw on the field last year. I am encouraged greatly, even more so at this point in time, by what we're seeing on the recruiting trail. But if you don't translate it to the field, then it's all kind of for nothing, right? You got to recruit at that level if you're going to win at the highest level. But just because you recruit at that level doesn't ensure, as we see with Texas and Texas A&M, that you're going to win at the highest level, get to the college football playoff, win conference championships, beat your rivals all the time. None of that is assured on that front. So I think that's kind of the threshold there. If Lanning turns in another 9-3 season, I wouldn't say I'll be disappointed. It would be another okay, would have liked to have taken a step forward, at least have a 10-2 regular season for sure. 9-3 wouldn't be terrible, but it wouldn't be great. But if you repeat this season, right? If you go 9-3, win the Holiday Bowl to get to 10-3, and then you deliver the best class in program history, that in and of itself, I don't think is going to end up warranting an extension from Rob Mullins and the rest of his team within the Oregon Athletic Department. But if you go 10-2, you win the Pac-12 Championship, you go 11-2, you maybe go win a Rose Bowl, or at least play in a Rose Bowl game. But with the way the Pac-12 is set up this year to be so deep and so competitive, winning the conference might be enough for that, then an extension comes into play. But I think that the recruiting and the wins are separate entities there in the eyes of an athletic department, and they should be. I think they absolutely should be. You recruit so that you can get results. And you can recruit without having elite results. Texas A&M is proof positive of that. But you recruit so that you can get the results, and then once you have them, then you say, okay, let's talk about an extension and make sure that we're locking them down here. Because when you win a conference championship, that's when other schools start to poke and prod and say, hey, can we get him? Hey, we would like to make a phone call. Hey, we'd like to talk about, this guy and such. And that even happened very briefly a year ago when the Auburn job came open as to whether or not Lanning was a candidate. He was kind of on their radar. But it never got to the point where Lanning and his agent leveraged that to get a raise out of Oregon. Everything just kind of stayed the same. So it might have just been a little bit of smoke, and there might not have actually been fire there, though I believe that Auburn probably looked at Dan Lanning, given what he was doing at the time, and because it was kind of in the midst of the 8-game winning streak and everything was looking really, really good for the Ducks, and he, of course, has SEC ties, but I don't think we have to worry about another school, in a significant way, given how that played out, coming to try and get Lanning to be their head coach, unless he wins a conference championship. But if he does, that's when you go into the contract extension phase of things, because that's what really, puts a coach on other schools' radars, is when you emerge from a conference as deep and talented as the Pac-12 is going to be this year, as the team hoisting the trophy at the end of the day and going to play in a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe the college football playoff, that turns a lot of heads. And by the way, I know everybody loves to rip Mario and such, but I guarantee you, after winning the Pac-12 in 2019 and beating Utah as handily as they did, which everyone forgets about because of what happened in 2021, I get it, but that's a thing that I saw happen. You did too. After that, I guarantee, Mario got the extension, the raise. I guarantee you other schools called about him. I guarantee there were other interested parties who wanted Mario Cristobal, who was recruiting at Oregon in a way that had never been done before, who had won a conference championship, who won a Rose Bowl. I guarantee there are universities across the country in the Power 5 college football landscape who called his agent or contacted him directly maybe and said, hey, we'd like to have you, interview for our head coaching position, because that's just kind of the way that this sort of stuff goes. So thank you for the question, as always, Blazer Duck. This one from my guy Adam Moody, another regular listener out there. I feel like all I'm doing is scrolling through random college football news nowadays. Yeah, kinda. What do you think I do all day? I golf and then I scroll through random college football news and react to it. Did come across something, though, that I went back and forth on. While there are certain advantages or disadvantages to the new playoff setup, everydayers out there know I am no fan of the 12-team college football playoff. Do you think it does more harm or help, more to harm or help Oregon moving forward? Not sure if you already covered this because you don't miss a thing, but wanted to ask. Keep it up, Spencer. Appreciate you, man. So my stance on this has not changed as a college football fan. I am morally opposed to the 12-team playoff. I would go back to the BCS before I advocated for an 8 to 12-team playoff. You could maybe sell me on 6. If you came out and said, we're going to go to a 6-team playoff, I'd say, okay, that's all right. Don't go beyond that, but you need to keep it right there. But we're going to 12, and I don't like that as a college football fan one bit. However, that doesn't mean I can't recognize the reality of the situation and admit that there are absolute positives that will come of it, right? You will have these bowl games factoring into, in theory, though I doubt in actuality, the national championship conversation and who ends up victorious. I got news for you. The best teams are still going to win. But financially for the Ducks, yeah, it's beneficial because you're going to get more money from the conference. Not that Oregon needs it, but hey, the Pac-12 is well behind a number of other conferences, and there's this whole situation with the Comcast overpayments and whatnot. Like, you can never have too much money in college sports because there's always a way to spend it productively within a Power 5 athletic department or any athletic department for that matter. So the positives for Oregon are that they are a brand that is going to be in that conversation year in and year out, and they are a brand and have established themselves as such in the college football world that the playoff would want to put in for an at-large opportunity, and that is going to be open to them. The other positive is that if you're the Ducks, if you stay in the Pac going forward, which I expect them to, they verbally agreed to a grant of rights, all of the 10 remaining schools did. That was reported by John Canzano a couple days ago. If they stay in the Pac, the path to the playoff is pretty clear, and it's not as crowded, it's not as muddy, it's not as murky. If you're a top 2 team in the Pac, along with a Washington or a Utah in a given year, and the conference championship has an auto qualifier anyway, without USC and UCLA, Oregon is one of maybe the top dog from a football standpoint in the conference going forward. So that gives them access to the playoff, which gives you visibility, which gives you money, which gives you an opportunity to win big games, which gives you an opportunity maybe to make a Cinderella run, all that sort of stuff. Now, that doesn't outweigh the negatives to me, which is it doesn't change the calculus for whether or not Oregon can win a national championship. But yeah, it could be fun. Like getting to that level, playing against those teams, playing on those stages is good for your program. And Oregon will have a ready-made opportunity to do that because of the way they recruit, because of the way that they have, performed over the last several years. They've had 10 or more wins in each of the last 3 full college football seasons, 2019, 21, and 22. So when you're churning out wins at a rate like that, it is going to provide you access to the playoff, and that can grow your brand even further, right? It's not as if Oregon doesn't have a national brand. We've talked about how they can recruit nationally, and we see it playing out regularly that they can go against the Alabamas, Ohio States, and Georgias of the world. But you only amplify that if you're in a 12-team playoff, seemingly every other year. So I think that those are good things for the Ducks, but still, to reach the ultimate goal, to be at the summit of college football and win a national championship, I don't think the equation has changed for the Ducks literally at all. Got to keep recruiting at a high level. Got to have the right confluence of events come together in one semi-magical season. Might need a break here and there from a matchup standpoint in terms of who you play, and somebody needs to, beat another team for you. But it is possible. It is there. And Lanning is on the right track at this point in time. Just got to have it all come together. Finally, let's talk about Oregon baseball. If you're listening to or watching this on Friday, they play later today. And game 1 may already be in the books by the time you listen to or watch this. Don't worry. I appreciate you regardless. But there's an opportunity in front of Oregon baseball that I think is really, really cool. And Mark Wasikowski and his staff and the players like Drew Cowley and Nishida and Ceballos and Logan Mercado and like all the guys who have been a part of this program for this season or in past seasons as well deserve a lot of credit for putting Oregon in this situation. And I think that the opportunity presented to them, really they should just play the Herb Brooks Miracle Speech, which is a fantastic movie. And my high school golf team, we always listened to that speech before we got out of the car to go to a match. We had a golf music playlist, and it always ended with that speech. So, and if you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It's Kurt Russell playing Herb Brooks. It just chills every single time. And they have, the start of that speech is great moments are born from great opportunity. And that's what you have here tonight, boys. And that's what Oregon has here in the Super Regional. They have an opportunity not just to go to Omaha, but I think to really engage the Oregon fan base around their program in a way that hasn't happened before, which isn't to say they haven't had support, but every team, in every sport, I think you can look to a play, a season, a moment that really feels like it was a catapult, a springboard to launch them into the next phase of, what their program can become. For Oregon football, the pick is, of course, the number one moment, right? Everyone looks back at that, and what I've always seen. Obviously, I wasn't alive at that time, but that moment is seen as the play that changed Oregon football forever and sent it on an upward trajectory, right? And it was Rich Brooks for a long time, and then it was Bellotti, and then it was to Chip. And, Oregon football's had other iconic moments as well, right? The 2010 season in general, going undefeated, national championship game, Chip Kelly, the blur offense, the, risky plays and that sort of stuff. I think the blowout in the Big House against Michigan in 2007, you can look to those moments as kind of like secondary to the pick, but they've had those instances in which you galvanized the fan base and made them feel like something magical was taking place. And I came on, I believe it was yesterday's show, and said, it might have been the day before, but Oregon can win the College World Series. I'm not saying it's likely. They might not have the pitching depth to be able to do so, but you're in a situation in which chaos prevails. Their bats are as good as any team in the country. Oral Roberts is really good. But you're hosting a super regional for the first time since 2012. Everything is already sold out. It's going to be an awesome environment. You're going to be on ESPNU or ESPN2. It's huge visibility for the program. And Mark Wasikowski's done a fantastic job the last several years. And if you get to Omaha for the first time, that is a big, big deal. And that sort of feeling, that sort of energy, that sort of moment can come to define how successful a program ends up being going forward. It is fantastic that they even got here. I mean, you knocked off Vanderbilt. That is a big-time college baseball program that has won. I think they won the College World Series in 2018. That is a big-time program. That is a big-time name to go in there and beat in college baseball. And you do that, puts your program on the map. And if you can capitalize on that and go to the College World Series and be one of the final 8 teams vying for a national championship, that can be looked upon, one day as the moment that it really started to elevate, that recruiting can take off, that everything just started to flow, the support ticked up, able to raise more money, whatever may have you to go in terms of what goes into building a successful college sports program. I think that's the opportunity that's here for Oregon baseball. It's not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. They've already thrilled us with a fantastic season, and I'm happy with whatever happens because I think they're in a really, really good spot. But this is a chance to really take it to the next level, to get to Omaha. It is a long, winding road to get to the College World Series, and they have as good of an opportunity as anybody. Hosting a super regional, that's a big, big deal. And I think it's an awesome place for the program to be. I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be following along very closely because, boy, I would love to turn on the College World Series as I do every summer and see the Ducks playing. That would be pretty darn cool. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the baseball. And until next week, go Ducks.